The first speaker, who is not physically here, is a young woman from Tchad, Fatima. So I will let Safia Sarking, the head of the organization, Women Beyond Survival, to speak for Fatima, and then I'll come back.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming to this very important event concerning education. We need to understand how important education is globally, and how sometimes the disparity in education between women and boys, girls and boys, are very apparent in certain countries. Now, Fatima is with my organization, Women Beyond Survival. As Christine said, she's a refugee. She was unable to attend, so first I will tell her personal story and then talk about her research. She herself, her family forced education. So she herself was a treasurer for the Chadian government as an accountant. So she worked for the Treasury Department. Education was forced on her by her family because they believed education was going to help the girls and boys tremendously throughout their lives. Consequently, her sisters and brothers have masters and PhDs, some in economics, some in many different fields of study. She herself got married, she had 2 children, and her husband said, "You cannot continue your education." She said, "Fine, I'm divorcing you, because my education is my life." And as a result, she did divorce her husband. The kids were in Chad, but she suffered from war, conflict, and disaster. And she was beaten many times in prison, so she escaped and ran away. Okay, now to talk about her research on Chad. The history of the education system of Chad has been negatively impacted by civil wars and have divided the impoverished country for 20 years. Following the independence from France, since 1996, some degree of political and social stability has taken hold, and it has had a positive influence on education. There have been improvements, and literacy rate has increased from 15% in 1960 to 20% in 1985. To 48% in 1996. The University of Jamina has experienced continuous growth with a budget for fiscal 2000 of 970 million French CFAs. The educational budget should represent at least 20% of the national expenditures to fund education adequately at all levels. The World Bank is currently funding a new project for primary education. The addition of 1,000 qualified teachers each year until 2015. The successful implementation of this plan would enable Chad to build a pedagogical foundation on which its education future could be firmly established. The only university in Chad is at the University of Jamina, or the capital, located in the capital and founded in 1971 under the name of Université du Tchad. Its academic year runs from October to June, and the 2 languages of instruction are French and Arabic. The university is divided into 4 schools: Faculté des Lettres et Sciences Humaines, School of Humanities and Social Science; Faculté de Droit et Sciences Économiques, School of Law and Economics. And you have Faculté de Sciences Exactes Appliquées, School of Exact and Applied Sciences, and the Faculty of Medicine, Medical School. The School of Medicine is the most recent addition to the university in Jamina. It opened in 1990 and had a 6-year curriculum. As with French medical model, medical studies in Chad include both pre-med and medical education in one continuing program, and graduated its charter class in 1997. In 2000, the medical school had a total enrollment of 251 students. In 2001, the University of Jamina had 5,230 students and faculty of 122, including only 5 women. The university offers a 3-year curriculum. After the successful completion of the first 2 years, students are awarded a DEUG, Diplôme Universitaire, Études Générales, General Education University Certificate, and after 1 additional year, the license, BA or BS. Since 1998, the University of Jamina offers programs leading to the master's degree in jurisprudence, economics, biology, history, geography, and Arabic literature. There's only 300 doctors in all of Chad of millions of people. 300, that's it. Now, the situation in Chad, once the girl got married, she was limited because the husband said you cannot continue your education. So this is a fight in Chad that they're working on, and it's up to the parents to force the education, like what happened to Fati in Chad. Her parents said, you're going to be educated. So she stood her ground and said to her husband, I'm not going to continue this marriage unless I have my education. So this is another fight that you will see in many African countries and many countries in the Middle East. Even though education is mandatory, once they marry, then the situation becomes reverse. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for
Jorie Dugan from the Columbia University Child Rights Organization will speak to us about the Philippines and the fact contrast it with the situation in Tchad, where the primary goals for universal education will not be satisfied of the Millennium Development Goals. And by secondary level, the problems with marriage are going to become very serious in allowing girls to continue their education. So Tchad is a particular case, classical of sub-Saharan Africa. The Philippines is a slightly different case, and she will tell us about it.
Thank you. The Philippines presents a unique case in today's discussion, not only for the East Asian region, but in comparison to the rest of the world. Currently, it is ranked 9th among nearly 200 countries in gender equity, according to the Global Gender Gap 2010 report, which is put out by the World Economic Forum. It ranked first on education and health and performed strongly on economic participation and political empowerment. In 2010, it was the only country in Asia to close the gap in both education and health. And in terms of education, not only has the Philippines closed the gap, but in fact, girls do better than boys on enrollment, attendance, and completion at all levels of school. For example, according to the Philippine Commission on Women, the completion rate of girls in the secondary level is 80%, compared to that of boys, which is 70%. And if you look at higher education at the university levels, in the school year 2005-2006, out of all the graduates, 57% were women and 43% were men. We also see more women holding CEO positions in top corporations and in previously male-dominated areas such as law, medicine, and engineering. However, just as Dr. Lourdes J. Cruz, who was the first female Filipina to receive the L'Oreal UNESCO Women in Science Award just last year, notes that, for example, you have women comprise 61% of the science graduates from the University of the Philippines. However, that number is not representative of the percent of women going into science careers. And this is a major issue that I will touch on a little later. However, given the struggle of girls' access to education at all levels in so many parts of the world, it is important to examine why this is different in the Philippines. And central to our understanding is the Philippines' culture and its unique history. There are many accounts that give evidence that Filipino culture has always valued women and seen particular traits of femaleness as strength. Historically, even during the Spanish colonization period, and the Spanish were actually shocked at the empowerment of women when they came to the Philippines and introduced a culture that subordinated women and denied them education. Because the Spanish never actually amounted to more than physically 1% of the population, the Philippines' culture and beliefs, including those of women, were able to be selectively adapted but never completely erased. And therefore, in the 20th century, when the U.S. came, they were not met with opposition when they were ready to see the strength and independence of women as something valuable. So the U.S. reintroduced education for both men and women, and there have been census reports for example, from 1903 and 1970, that noted even then girls have exceeded boys in many of the provinces in attendance and completion of school. However, at the same time, the U.S. colonization had a severe negative economic impact on the Philippines, especially to women, and especially to rural women who were not in need of Western-style liberalization, and in fact lost potential for self-employment and economic entrepreneurship. This has great impact even today, as an impoverished national economy is still a major reason why children aren't able to access school. So even though goal number 3, which looks at gender equity at all levels of schooling, has a high probability of being achieved by 2015 and is actually being realized right now, the same expectation, unfortunately, does not apply to goal number 2, which looks to give primary education to all children by 2015. In fact, the UNDP progress report for the Philippines in 2010 noted this goal as having a low probability of being achieved. And there are many reasons for this, but one in particular is that over the past decade, the Philippines has experienced a significant regression in the progress it was making for free and compulsory primary education for its children. If you look at the net enrollment rate, up until the 1990s, up until early 2000, the enrollment rate for elementary school was at 97% for children and was doing very well. But since then, it started to decline. And in 2006, 2007, it reached 83.2%, which is the lowest it had been for about 2 decades. So since then, though the enrollment rate has been incrementally improving, the rate indicates that it's not likely to be sufficient to reach 100% by 2015. Another troubling trend in both public and private school is that children in grade 1 are the ones who are most likely to drop out. In fact, 11.5% of all girls and 14.6% of all boys drop out in the first grade. And this number is significantly higher than all the other grades in primary school and secondary school and tertiary school. A survey done in 2008 indicated that some reasons children gave for dropping out was the lack of personal interest, the high cost of education, and the inability to cope with schoolwork. Now, the Philippines' compulsory education system is one of the shortest in the Asian Pacific region, with only 6 years of elementary school and 4 years of secondary school. And currently, the policy is that children start at age 6, but up until 1995, they generally didn't start until the late developmental age of 7. Early childhood education is not compulsory and generally not free in the Philippines, so few children have access to this preparation, which can be a major factor for children's ability to cope with their first year of formal schooling. Access, however, has been increased, and the Department of Education is trying to increase access to early childhood development because data collected from 2003-2008 showed a slow but positive growth rate of children who were exposed to early childhood development and those who stayed in school. Of course, there are other factors that strain a family's ability to send their child to school, which aren't uncommon to many countries around the world, such as severe amounts of poverty, which the Philippines has, poor health, political instability and violence in some regions, child labor, and so forth. These factors are exacerbated by the fact that demands exceed resources, and the Philippines has been experiencing a great population increase, especially among the poor. And this extreme poverty and need to provide for her family have greatly impacted the role, especially for educated women. Of the 9 million Filipinos who work overseas, the majority are women, and the remittances they make contribute to about 10% of the GDP and provide extreme necessities to their families, such as food, the ability to build houses, and to send their children to school. And you see many women graduating with degrees to become doctors, pharmacists, and dentists, and so forth. However, you see them traveling out of the country because of the much lower pay scales and lack of opportunities within the Philippines. So for instance, if you're a doctor, you earn very little if you work in a rural or small town as compared to a similar job in a developed country. So consequently, one of the most crucial needs is family-sustaining jobs in the Philippines. And another phenomenon we're seeing is that the countries to which they're traveling generally don't allow non-citizens to participate in the technical jobs. So even though we have women graduating in the science and technology, they generally take lower skilled jobs simply because they need to provide for their families outside the country and in the Philippines. To conclude, on the brighter side of things, basic education spending is still a top priority and is given the largest amount of the allocation of all the agencies. And the President Aquino has actually given more than any of his predecessors in 2011 towards education. However, the Philippines is still only spending 2.3% of its GNP towards education, whereas the East Asian region has reached an average of 3.9%. So though the Philippines has a lot to be proud of for Millennium Goal number 3,